Hey Gabrielle, we're just going to be testing um the video because think that the best way is to do either like an unlisted link or a public link. Did you get my email regarding the part two topics?
Oh, okay. But I don't understand what's happening with the video from the first one.
Oh, I just want to see if it is working.
Okay.
Uh, Let me see. So this is going to be kind of meta. All
Is it
right.
unlisted?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. No, it's public.
Oh, you
Should I
should make it
also-
unlisted.
Got you.
Sure.
This is very meta. I feel like I'm listening to, I don't know, it's strange. Anyways, so let's see. Yeah, so I'll be adding some things here since we're covering a lot of content.
Wait,
Um,
did you change it to unlisted?
yeah, I'll do it now. I can do it via my iPhone.
Okay. If you don't write Flutie Foundation, you should write the whole name. It's like the short name is Flutie Foundation, and then the long name is like the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism, because it's not Doug
Got
Flutie,
you.
it's like Flutie Jr.
Got you.
Different guy.
Got you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do
Save or
the
take out the Doug or
short
edit the other
part.
word, I guess.
All right. Yeah, so we can start with the Flutie Foundation.
Wait, one sec. You want to do like a welcome back or whatever?
Welcome back, everybody. Where
Yeah.
we left off was that Gabrielle is very good at music, used to be able to recite all of the first Hunger Games book.
Yes, that's the most relevant.
From any chapter. If I said like chapter two, go, like you'd be able to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
um
kind of
and
memorization.
their brother can currently like still tell you
I guess, yeah, if you tell my brother your
general.
birthday, then he'll tell you what day of the week you were born on. That's not like a super unique thing to him, though. Apparently, like a lot of autistic people do that because you just learn the formula and then you know it. I don't know it,
So
but
a
maybe
topic that uh we're already like diverging from the topics that I have written down, but
Cool.
I just think that it's like so important because there's so much to cover and there's so much that I feel um uh like I wouldn't think to bring up or people wouldn't think to think about, but um you made me think about how there's a lot of strange um overlap um like you might not find on like a diagnostic test for like autism spectrum disorder. Particularly I wanted to bring up and get your opinion on I don't know if you would call them stereotypes or like general like common traits,
Mhm.
but being particular with silverware,
Yeah.
or your opinion or your knowledge on that, particularly spoons and like other cutlery specifically,
Yeah.
and being common to be picky eater, particularly with textures,
Mhm.
um, and can you think of any of the other like more niche ones off the top of your head of speech patterns? You had a good word for this, where you meet someone and if you know enough autistic people, then you're uh,
Well,
it's easier to
yeah,
identify just
it
by the
doesn't
speech.
apply to everyone, but there's like I think the word I use is cadence. We had one friend in particular who like is autistic and did not introduce himself as such. But then after we were talking about several things, um, I like yeah, I asked that and he was like, "How did you know?" And I was like, "Well, the stuff
Yeah,
we talked about, but also like the cadence at which you speak is like
yeah,
very it's not even necessary like I don't know if it is a thing. It just reminds me of several of my friends who
yeah,
yeah, and I'm studying speech language pathology now in my
yeah,
post-bac program at UMD, and so maybe there will be something behind that that I learn, probably not at least through like my classes.
yeah,
But yeah, cadence was the word. But I don't formally know much about that. I just it's from an experience thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and then the other two things you mentioned, like regarding silverware, I guess, and food. I think those partially go together because like the experience of eating can be a big thing.
Oh, and misophonia. That's one that I feel like is not often known, but yeah. Or
Yeah. So like the experience of eating can be a big thing for autistic people in different ways. Autism, I think, is the diagnosis that has the highest correlation with ARFID, if I am not incorrect. I'm not sure. But yeah, and part of that comes down to just like sensory aversions or sensory seeking behavior with like really specific things. Um, and part of it is about like transitions with eating. Like for some people, it's like it's hard to, and I think a lot more people, like outside of the autism community too, experience with this with showering. It's like a lot of people, and this might sound funny to anyone who doesn't have trouble with showering, but a lot of people with like different, all sorts of different things, like it's the going from like dry to wet or even like the process of like taking off of your clothes or whatever. It's like you don't want to get in the shower, like you don't want to get in the shower, but then once you're in the shower you do not want to get out of the shower. And so for some people with eating that presents as like it's difficult to stop, especially if the eating is like very enjoyable. And it's not just like the way that, I don't know, like someone might eat a whole gallon of ice cream after a breakup or whatever, that kind of like trope. It's more of like a, it's not even sometimes often about like the taste necessarily, maybe partially the taste or like whatever. And it's not like a carelessness thing or like a thing like that, but it's just like the sensory input is so regulating that like or satisfying or whatever that like you keep going even when it's making your stomach hurt or even when it's like you might know something logical of why you should not keep eating this thing that you're eating, but then um it's just like you feel like you must. And then that also applies with like non-food things, like people who have pica, which is another disorder that I think is most commonly correlated with ASD. Pica is, I guess, in short, eating things that are not edible. Often that happens with paper.
you know, this is
But
so interesting because like I was saying before we
I
it's just sorry, not this. Okay, how do you spell pica? I'm sorry.
think it's
Pica.
PICA.
Okay. Before we got off, I was saying how we talk about this stuff all the time,
Yeah.
but so many of these things we're just now getting to talk about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to
Right.
say,
What are we supposed to be talking? Yeah, go ahead.
oh no, this is totally fine. Like I was expecting to like these are the topics that I would like to get to eventually, but like I like, embracing the ADHD and
Mhm.
like very knowledgeable like
And the
ness of
interconnected
yourself
nature of
is
things.
great. I
Yeah.
mean like like diverging from the topics is good. But because I mean they're all related and they're all important. Um and but yeah, I wanted to mention that so Gabrielle knows this, but I had a long-term partner, 7 years. So when I was from 14 until I was 21, who um, was undiagnosed until later on. Didn't realize until maybe like a couple years into our relationship. I'm not even really sure how we figured it out. It was probably around the same time that I figured out that I had ADHD, and we're kind of studying that stuff together. But it's so interesting. Like I'm always learning about like little things where I'm like, oh, like my ex-partner used to do that. Like where it was like a very like funny thing that they would do in class where they would just like eat things for on a dare. And he was so good at it of like eating crayons.
Oh.
He was very like class clown and funny and silly, but I was thinking about that when we were talking about the stigma related to autism too, because I mean he's a great guy and I like talking about like my experience or our experience that we shared together of like kind of learning these things.
Yeah.
And the stigma is very real. It feels strange when I'm like, oh yeah, like my partner was autistic or is autistic. And people give me like a look, like if they're not like informed, where like I feel the need to like explain, and I feel guilty about that, where I feel the need to explain if like he's just a normal dude, like you wouldn't. like be able to tell, and that language just like I'm wondering if you have any advice for how to navigate those situations because I feel bad saying like he's a
Like,
normal dude or like
mhm.
you wouldn't be able to tell off the street or whatever
So
like
I think like the stigma around most things comes from like how does that thing affect other people?
yeah.
And so, for example, like this example you gave with the crayons and kind of the class clown
Yeah.
thing, it's like when these, and I don't know how much that specific behavior is related to autism, but just for an example, like when these different traits are utilized to entertain other people,
hmm
um, or to do things that are quantifiably good or
Yeah, by other
approved
people you mean like holistic people
whatever. No, like
or
being a class clown, like entertaining the people around you, or doing things like getting good grades, from memorization skills or whatever it is, like
okay.
it's not affecting other people negatively. And so even though it might be related to internal struggles and might be related to even like co-occurring conditions where
Yeah.
like doing this thing, um, that you're doing in part because you're autistic, um, like has negative physical impacts on you.
And I
It's
noticed
like
as
it's not stigmatized because it's not affecting other people negatively. The
no,
way that like when I was diagnosed with ADHD, um, like that was the reason I was diagnosed is mainly because of like how it affected other people. And so, or not why I was diagnosed, but like why I was referred for diagnosis. Why my teacher pointed out when like technically teachers aren't supposed to use language as direct as she did. But yeah, but anyway,
Yeah, I wanted to mention too that or about the stigma that I'm not sure if you've experienced this of this kind of like black and white thinking of I don't know what you'd call it of just like the classical like stereotype of like an autistic person that needs a lot of care
yeah.
and like just a negative stereotype and like this other side of the um I don't want to say spectrum because it's like,
Mhm. Yeah.
this other side where it's like savant where when I would tell people, oh yeah, my ex-partner is autistic, they would look at me like with kind of a look kind of where I was gauging that they were leaning towards the negative side and then after they would meet him and he would guess flags very well, then they would be like, "Oh, I understand. He's a savant." And I was like, no, I mean, he's just a guy. Like, he's just a guy. He's
Yeah.
just,
I think
and
it's
I'm not
really
sure if you've experienced that, but like, I know that was definitely something that I experienced secondhand of like, it had to be one or the other. It was very hard for people to grasp, like, oh, yeah, like, he's just a guy.
um I think it's very funny that you started that like topic with the words black and white thinking because that is a phrase that is often used to describe autistic people. Um, and
I didn't know that.
what you're saying, yeah,
I know it for OCD and for
yeah, yeah,
ADD.
true. But like what you're saying is about like how people outside of that, like I guess non-autistic people, autistic people, like think about autistic people, which is very interesting. But yeah, I think it's like I don't know. I don't think that's really what those I don't know if that's in relation to the image you were just showing before this. I don't think the image matches up with like the stuff you were saying, in terms of like a negative and positive.
Oh no, no,
Um,
no. That
oh,
wasn't that was unrelated. I'm just
um,
collecting things
cool.
for when we eventually segue into our comparison of
Thing.
organizations like the Foodie Foundation and Autism Speak.
Got it. Okay. Yes. So yeah. And
Yeah,
then to
so
answer about the silverware also. So partially because of the food stuff. And just because of like sensory things and like because eating is such like can be such a process for people and especially like eating sometimes eating around other people can be like such like a mind-consuming thing. Or the opposite where like you kind of anyway. For that reason, like having things that feel correct in your hands, having things that are comfortable and whatnot, is very helpful to like alleviate the burden of that. Um, And so I think that's one of the main reasons that a lot of autistic people, like I have my own, and partially for sustainability, nice. I like carry like this one pack of utensils in my backpack, along with the many other things I carry in my backpack.
I just want to
Um,
make sure that we cover like these important things before I forget, because I can't believe how many people don't know this and how we went so long without knowing this, that autistic people and how it relates to driving, and autistic people and uh, like early signs from childhood of like later speech development, or just because I know that there's probably a lot of people out there not necessarily watching this video. I doubt we're gonna get that many views. I don't think we're gonna blow up. But anyways,
yeah, no,
just people that just don't know that like these very like common things of something that they thought was like very niche is like um
yeah, it's like
really
you meet one
autistic
person who
indicator.
does this thing, and you're like, oh, that's their quirk, and then you
Yeah,
meet another
exactly, exactly.
autistic person, you're like, oh, that might be a pattern.
Like, yeah, yeah.
But
Like
yeah,
people don't know the patterns.
I
Yeah.
think that, so yeah, what I was saying is like, I think that's like the main thing around the utensils. But then there's also for some of us, I think like in terms of like rules and I don't know if logic is the right word, like rigid thinking maybe, is that like certain things are for certain purposes or like certain things are best for certain purposes. And like, why wouldn't I just use the thing that's most accurate or most equipped for something? And so part of that is like where it comes to like language and literal thinking and using words that like maybe wouldn't be other people's first thought of like what word to use in that sentence. Um, but then for me, like with utensils, it's like I'm very specific about like I eat soup with my soup spoon. Like it's like the kind of spoon you would get like at
Hmm.
I don't know, like at a Chinese restaurant with like egg drop soup. It's like better for soup than, and I eat a lot of soup. But it's like better for soup than like normal spoons are. And there are other utensils. It's like why would I not use the thing that fits this thing the best unless there's, like I'm in a situation where I don't have access to that tool or whatever, which is partially why I carry all of this random stuff around in my backpack so that I am equipped, I guess, in my mind for different situations and I'm able to like handle them most efficiently. And that's not necessarily efficient because I'm carrying around all this stuff that some of it I need, like medically. But other stuff, it's like, I don't know. It's just like about my idea of what's right or logical or efficient versus like what might actually be true, or maybe nothing's really true, but like what other people might think. So I think that's part of the utensils thing as well, and the being particular about it, because it's like, why would you like use something that's not the ideal thing to use? It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But yeah, cool. Um, what is the next
Oh,
subtopic?
this is actually the first topic, believe it or not. The Flutie Foundation, your experience with the Flutie Foundation, what they do, and how you've been able to be a part of their mission.
So the Doug Flutie Junior Foundation for Autism has been around for like 25 years, and they've evolved a lot in those 25 years. It was started by Doug Flutie, who was I think he's like a former NFL quarterback.
Okay.
He's a former football player, um, who gained lots of money through that career and other ventures, was like on cereal boxes, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and his son, one of his kids was diagnosed with autism, and I think other like very specific diagnoses that are no longer used at like a very early age. And so one of the things that that family decided to do with all of the money I mentioned is to start the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism. Um, and the Flutie Foundation is really cool because, as I mentioned, like they evolved in that span of time in a way that many other organizations didn't. Um, and new organizations come up and new projects, and that's really cool. But to like have something that is already backed by like lots of money and resources and
You know of the main like funding? Because I was looking into that for another part of this project, but it's okay if you
well,
don't know off the top of your
Flutie Foundation does like a lot of strategic partnerships in terms of like corporate funding. So
head.
for example, cool. Like they have this partnership with Jersey Mike's where like
I know that
last year
was the one that I was gonna say. Yeah.
$1 million from Jersey Mike's, the sandwich place.
Hmm.
And like half of that $1 million was, this is probably wrong, but like in my mind, like half of that $1 million was raised on one specific day in March called Day of Giving, where like all of the proceeds from a certain store go to Flutie Foundation from a certain set of stores in like the Northeast, maybe. I don't know exactly. Oh no, like it's Jersey Mike's Day of Giving specifically, which is like a
Got
different day.
you.
And it also might not be called Day of Giving. It might be called,
You know, it's
yeah,
February.
okay, it is. Yeah, and it's in March.
Oh,
Um,
I
and
clicked on
so,
this. This is not right. Right.
um, anyway, like that's one of the things where like I know $1 million last year came just from Jersey Mike's. And then they have, of course, like individual donors and like all of the different campaigns
Yeah.
that nonprofits do and stuff. But they yeah, had money to start with 25 years ago, and that's really cool. But yeah, like to be an organization that started maybe with like, for example, they had the puzzle piece as a part of their prior logo. Um, and they had other programming that they emphasized over with the kind of stuff they do now. But like they evolved, I think, ahead of what the mainstream organizations were kind of doing, and what even like the mainstream public knowledge and perception of autism is, which I think is really
Mm.
cool. Um, and I think that's important to acknowledge, like, oh yes, they used to have a puzzle piece in their logo and they used to do this and whatever,
Yeah, that's
but unlike Autism Speaks, like they did not try to cover up those things, and they also like learned quickly and quickly made changes.
yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, Flutie Foundation is cool because they put money directly in the hands of autistic adults, um, and give them like autonomy over like what their goals are and what they want to do. And then they also have all of these different like grant programs for kids and like um different places that like work with autistic kids and adults. Um, and they award grants to what are, in my opinion, mostly really cool places. And then they have like really specific grant programs that one of these is how I ended up being involved with them. They have grant programs where they're working with like autistic public figures who are like kind of at the top of their field in some way, to utilize like their area of expertise and their strengths and everything to give back to the broader community on that topic. So I was introduced to Flutie Foundation through their Cody Lee Gives Back grant. And Cody Lee is an autistic and blind musician who I think won America's Got Talent and then also won the America's Got Talent All Stars competition where like all the winners compete against each other. So he is officially goated. And he started this partnership with Flutie Foundation where it was like I think grants of up to 700 or $800 or something, for autistic musicians to do things that would further their career and personal and creative goals. And so for me, I was one of the winners of that grant, and for me, I just bought this like really, or I guess they bought for me, of my choice, this very specific outdoor PA system, like that had like it was battery operated and this like rechargeable whatever. Because I at that time was performing at a lot of farmers markets, and I had been a street performer for quite a while. Street performing I think was technically it was my first job a little bit, because I started it a few months before I started tutoring. But yeah, and
Anyway.
the stuff that I had was like really insufficient. And so, oh, that's Juliet. Yeah, she is also autistic. But
Yeah, it's me. And
that's,
also two other autistic musicians, right?
I don't remember if Sparkbird is autistic, but most of their
I
listeners.
swear they both said that.
No, I believe it. I believe it. I just
And
don't
then
remember.
at this little concert that we got to go to, there was like probably what, 15 people, 20 people
Yeah.
in the,
So
and it was
the
so
person on the
awesome.
left of
I
that
remember
photo.
they said they were like, raise your hand if you're not autistic. And I was like, dang, for this is like
Yeah,
the
but I
only
think that
time that I'm gonna be like, I'm just drastically outnumbered because I'm
yeah,
a
yeah. But yes, so the Chloe Lee Gives Back grant, and then I like got to buy the speaker, and that really helped with like the different like me being able to make an income in like a more efficient way and like be able to perform at more places and stuff using this little PA system. Um, and then now they have the it's like Amani Williams Gives Back grant, and he is like the first openly autistic NASCAR driver. And so his grant is focused on giving money to initiatives that help autistic people with transportation and transportation training. So like there
We
are
talk
programs
about
that
driving.
teach people like how to navigate their public transportation systems and like just pedestrian safety and stuff like that. But then there's also like even here in Maryland, like at Montgomery College, there's a special specific like driving education, driver's ed course that is geared towards people with autism and IDDs. For because you know 66% you might not know 2/3 of autistic people can't drive. I think that out of those 2/3, probably half of them could drive if they were given the right supports and resources, and then the other half of that it includes me, where it's like neurologically and psychologically and whatever else it is like we like driving is probably just not like a good goal for us in terms of like safety and whatever. And it's like if I had been diagnosed with autism at 2 and had been receiving certain like occupational therapy and whatever from an early age, like maybe that would be a different outcome for me. But there are many different reasons why autistic people can't or don't drive. But anyway, yeah. So like the that grant specifically, that one and the Cody Lee one, like those are really specific examples of how the Flutie Foundation like partners with autistic people who are doing great things and like meaningfully uses those partnerships, not like, for example, just highlighting these people as like a source of inspiration porn is like a phrase that's used.
Yeah, we
But
were
like
talking about that in
meaningfully
class.
connecting those to like where is funding going and like how is the community being helped. And so yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
cool. Um,
No, th I mean, this video that we watched, I'm like, because I mean the way the assignment is phrased, it's not, giving the answer away. That, this video is very much just inspiration porn. But yeah, I might play just a little bit of it. If you want to speak on one of the other like bullet points I have for this section, which is I know that you've talked some about like some of the worst like practices and policies that you know of that are like still going on relating to
Mhm.
autistic people like across the US. I think you mentioned this might have been last year. You might have mentioned like electrotherapy still being used. Am
Judge
I
Rottenberg
remembering that
Center
right?
in yeah, that like electric I don't even know what
Like
the
shock
right
therapy?
call it is like electric shock treatment therapy. I don't know. Yeah, it's still being used in places like the Judge Rottenberg Center in Massachusetts. Um and then like it was banned and then it was unbanned. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I have some friends specifically who um are I guess like survivors of that
I'm really
treatment,
sorry.
that abuse method.
From what
And
states? From Massachusetts?
yeah, one of them is from Massachusetts, and I'm
You
gonna check
would you
if
be able to talk
she
more as
has
well?
spoken publicly on this, but
Um,
I'm pretty sure she was at Rottenberg specifically.
so actually,
So she was at
I might
JR
forget this.
specifically. Huh?
I might forget this, but you can continue right after. But I just want to make sure that I don't forget of just because there's so many different things. But I've gotten before when I'm talking about like these types of topics, I'll often use phrases like, oh, like the autistic community or like the autistic like community majority like generally says blank, like generally disagrees with the philosophies from Autism Speaks, like different things like that, where I've gotten like the interjection of who is the aut like how do you
Yeah.
they know
Like,
like
the
and I
nice thing
wanted
right
to
now
just speak
is
about that like your friends from that are national international how you guys stay connected if it's just through
so
Flutie if it's because you're just very kind of a global person or
yeah. I think using that phrase has become easier and easier because over even just the last 5 years, um, like 5 years ago, what that might mean is like the majority of people who are labeled as high functioning autistic, who are given platforms to speak about stuff, and their experiences, and that might be like kind of lopsided. But over the past like even just 5 years, there has been a lot more recognition and listening to non-speaking and other high support needs autistic people who are some of them are just gaining access to like speaking out in different ways that they didn't have prior to this, and then some people are just like they've been at this but now they're just finally like gaining attention and being listened to. But like it's nice because now I think more than ever at any point in history we see a really wide range of people, autistic people with different experiences, um and like different levels of and modes of communication and stuff, like having platforms online. And so we're finally kind of able to verify some of the assumptions that have, I guess, were previously kind of assumptions made just based off of the people who had the ability and platform and like reputability to speak on these things. And we refer to that as, oh, the autistic community thinks this. And not all of those things are necessarily like still true or still the most like widely like accepted thing, but most of them are, based on what we've now seen from like non-speaking advocates like Hari, whose last name I'm blanking on, but he's currently working on his PhD at Vanderbilt. And he's a non-speaking autistic advocate and PhD student who I believe graduated from UCLA in 2022, and just entirely communicates by typing. And then also Elizabeth Bonker, who I got to work with through the Flutie Foundation, who was the valedictorian of her college, entirely non-speaking, using spelling to communicate and like typing everything. Um,
I wanted
and
to say, I'm sorry, I just know that we could go on for, but you can feel free to continue what you were saying. But
okay.
I'm gonna forget. Because every time you say something, then I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? You should talk about this. Sorry. But if you can also talk about uh, like when we're talking about kind of like elevating the voices of the autistic community, like say like even if it's there's not like a website you can go to be like autistic community, what do you think? Necessarily, it's kind of just like the global, like it's the internet. Like would you agree with that? It's like just the internet as a whole, like you can't,
I think a lot of it starts on the micro level of like
yeah,
listening to and meaningfully engaging
yeah,
with the people around you.
yeah. Like I know that, like I mean, um, I have you to ask when I am unsure, but like, sometimes before I ask you, I'll usually I'll ta like ask TikTok, I'll ask YouTube, I'll ask
Yeah.
Google. Like what kind of like advice do you have for because I know that you have the personal experience of like your lived experience, but then also like there's stuff like other topics in disability that like you go out of your way to research and that I go out of my way to research of like for instance like I know that with the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves movie, that was like a topic that came up relating to disability and like how like the I think it's dwarfism community, or is that right?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
like both.
how they felt about
And
the
how that community
depiction
is
of,
actually very split,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
about, or at least the
So
people speaking about it online have like very
yeah.
differing opinions about it's like Peter Dinklage and like how
Hmm.
he influenced the choices that were made in that movie. And yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's like, do you have like an opinion on, I know that I try my best to search on TikTok and search on YouTube, search on Google, like see articles, but it's kind of tough. I mean, like algorithms, can
Yeah.
create echo chambers and all that.
I mean, I think for that reason, I can't really recommend one source. I think the thing to recommend is like pay attention to what sources you're looking at, and this applies with
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
And like try to
Yeah.
gain knowledge and insights from a wide variety of sources, and realize that often the sources that are going to be gaining the most like recognition and publicity, and I think this is less true than it used to be, but those are the ones that are like perpetuating like the dominant and like long-standing narratives, which might be outdated by now. And so Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like something that's very solid and like reputable, the Autism Self-Advocacy Network is a nonprofit organization, which I would say is probably the first place to go look. But I think really it's just about like what information are you looking for specifically, and about what like subsets of people with a certain diagnosis or of a population or whatever, and like just try to be specific in your research and try to be specific in what knowledge you're gaining because
Hmm.
as you mentioned, like autism is a multidimensional spectrum.
Yeah. I
And
would think
so
just like
whatever
ask
topic you're
questions
thinking
and
about,
like,
yeah.
respect
And that when it
lived
comes to
experience of
like
people.
asking questions and all of that, like they're
Yeah.
like we are friends and we have lots of conversations and you ask me lots of questions and stuff, but there's kind of like this level of like free labor that's expected of many
Hmm.
disabled
That's a
people
good
because it's
point.
like, oh, it's a chance for you to share your experience, but it's like, no, like it's really like you're expecting me to educate you and for what and why. And so like there's a
Yeah,
place
I do
and time,
think,
but
yeah.
it's definitely like do your research first before asking questions when it's
Mhm.
applicable. It's
Yeah,
not
I
always
agree.
applicable, especially like if you're asking about someone's personal experiences. Um, but yeah, there's so much more reputable, like scientifically sound information that exists on the internet now. If you like understand how to find and identify that information. And if you don't, then just, look at lots of different things so that you have different sources to look at. But the point is like for most things, um, there should be a starting point of something that already exists, some labor that's already been done, for example, that you can utilize before just asking people things.
Okay, and then I'm gonna forget. I'm sorry. So as a speech language pathologist, um or soon to be speech language pathologist, studying
Soon
speech
is
language
soon is a strong word, but
I just wanted to bring up that it's such a common like topic in disability studies, but which I feel like is it's it's not the first one that comes to my mind, but it's like person first, um like language of
Mhm.
autistic person with autism. Of like, I would never correct someone if, oh, I'm autistic. No, you're not. You're a person who has autism. I would never do that. But throughout this interview, I've said like, oh, this person who has autism, da da da.
Yeah.
Switching back and forth where it makes sense linguistically, I feel like, and for flow of sentences. And I don't know if you have any opinions on that, but that's
Yeah.
my
So
mentality. Obviously,
language can
like,
be very important because
yeah.
language can be super empowering.
Hmm.
It can help people understand themselves and each other and everything. And language can also be very, very harmful.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think that some specificities of language are the least of the problems that our
That's
community
what
is
I
facing
was thinking. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, like I do have some preferences, but I don't personally care.
Yeah, like
Um,
within
Much
this
that
interview,
language
is there
is
anything that
around.
that rung in
Um,
your ear that I've said that where you're like, mm,
not that I can remember at this time. So like I use autistic in the same way that I am Jewish, I am queer. I'm not a person with Judaism, and I'm not a person with queerness. I don't know, like I am autistic, I am this, I am that, whatever. But at the same time, like sometimes I refer to myself as like being diagnosed with ASD or autism
yeah,
spectrum disorder. Sometimes I will use the
things
phrase
can
on
be
the
true.
spectrum, which I know some people don't like the phrase on the spectrum. But every single word that there is, like some people don't like it and some people do. I think the most harmful thing is using language that's just simply outdated, where it's not like a preference, but it's like, oh, like that is not a thing anymore.
Hmm.
And for example, like with Asperger's syndrome, the only place where I'm like, okay, is like if someone was diagnosed with that pre DSM-5 and they want to continue using the diagnosis that like they grew up with in their whole life, I'm like, okay, I get that. Some people still are like, no, you shouldn't call yourselves that. And I understand where they're coming from too, because of all of the information that we've learned about like the history of that name and that diagnosis. But the fact that there are still people now like who are using that phrase and are not diagnosed with it and are saying like, oh, like that person seems like they have what it's like no. And there's like other things too, like other diagnoses that are like even more outdated than that, where and just other language like pathologizing language about like symptoms or traits or whatever, where it's like it doesn't come down to preference in the way that person first versus identity first language does, but it's like that's simply outdated and
I put
sometimes
a
just
new link in the chat.
Okay, great.
Wait, no, I didn't yet. I'm doing it
Yeah.
now. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Okay. I put a new link in the chat. Click it, click it.
Okay.